Let's go ahead and kick this off. My name is Michael Mogill. I'm the president and CEO of Crisp Video, and I'm very grateful to be joined today by Tanner Jones. And I've come across Tanner on numerous occasions. In fact, when we were putting together this type of, I guess the idea originally for a presentation like this, I'd say that, legal SEO myths. I mean, you'd be amazed at the things that we have heard over the years from various law firms and attorneys. Like, it seems like this is the Wild West, right? So. I pitched this idea of what if we just had people submit any question, and my goal was to find somebody brave enough to be willing to answer any question relating to SEO. So,
or stupid enough
to bust SEO myths. And, I put out a couple feelers, and I think Tanner was one of the only ones that took me up on this. So very grateful for that. And what I can say is, I know with Tanner, he's going to give a very straightforward answer. There's not going to be much ambiguity. You may not like the answer, but it will be the truthful answer. And I think that's ultimately what we're looking for here. Tanner, I'm sure you've heard your fair share of SEO myths and just various questions. Some true, many false.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot being said today about SEO, both by law firms, and what they've just come to experience and learn and know as truths to themselves, and what other providers are saying out there. And I think the reason I'm so excited about this particular webinar, Michael, is particularly just to be able to demystify SEO. It doesn't have to be as complicated or convoluted as some people make it out to be. So hopefully that's exactly what we accomplish today.
Wonderful. And what we did, so the response that we got when we put this out, we actually included an anonymous questionnaire so that the attendees could submit any question that they want related to SEO. Like, nothing is off limits. And we got over 200 responses. I have condensed these because there was a lot of repeat questions, which means that obviously a lot of people have similar concerns, down to 20. And as you'll see, nothing is off limits. So let's go ahead and let's kick this off. I mean, I think the first thing before we even get into the questions, Tanner, if you wouldn't mind, just for everyone in our audience, could you define what is SEO? What is this thing that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a good fundamental question to start this discussion off with, particularly just because if you ask this to 100 SEOs out there, you're probably going to get 100 varied responses. Search engine optimization is what SEO stands for, and I suspect the majority of the attendees here at least know that portion. Search engine optimization is the practice of getting traffic from the search engines to your website. But ideally, SEO is complemented with a number of other elements of web marketing. One in particular, which would be conversion rate optimization, CRO. Because it's one thing to get traffic to the website from the search engines. It's another thing to be able to convert that traffic into leads. And so ideally, a strong SEO campaign would have a focus on getting traffic, but also a focus on actually building enough trust to that user to drive a lead, to get a call.
Man, this is like the hot button topic. Everybody wants to talk about SEO. We were chatting a little bit earlier today. I was saying that this has got to be the one topic that everybody loves to talk about, but nobody knows what they're talking about, right? So it's like, who do you trust? Who do you believe? Because I don't even know if Google knows, right? If you were to ask them, hey, how do we rank these pages? Even their definition changes. So let's just kick this off. I want to just, let's go in gunslinging. This is by far one of the most popular questions that we got. Let's be, let's kick it off right off the bat. Here's the first one: myth or fact? Guaranteed search rankings within 3 months. I've heard this one a number of times. We've had law firms and attorneys say that they were promised to get some guaranteed search ranking, whether it's in 3 months or 4 months. I mean, heck, in 6 months. Is this fact or fiction?
It's a difficult question, in relation to myth or fact. Just because guaranteed search rankings doesn't necessarily give the context or the perspective of what exactly you're going to be ranking for. There are hundreds, I mean, really thousands of obscure search terms that you could very likely get ranking within a couple months, maybe even a month, depending on how strong your website is already from an authoritative standpoint. But when it comes to guaranteeing search results, I'm very skeptical of that, and that's something that I really want. You know, when I'm speaking with a law firm, I want to be very, very upfront in the fact that when you're optimizing, doing an SEO campaign, you are depending on a third party. In most cases, we talk about Google because they pretty much monopolize, they own the lion's share of search today. There are other search engines out there, certainly, but when you are performing an SEO campaign, you are building a case to a third party to respond to that, to see the value of the work that you're putting onto your website and that you're publishing out on the web, and expecting them to be able to respond to that work. And so to be able to lay out a guarantee with the expectation that a third party, somebody that you're completely unaffiliated with, is going to respond to that and deliver results is it is a lofty guarantee. But I will say too that you know, I would respond to guarantees like that in terms of 3 months to ask specifically, what are you guaranteeing? What search terms are you guaranteeing that I will rank for? Will those search terms be vetted by me as the law firm? Will I be able to go through these terms and make sure they're highly relevant to my practice? And another good question to ask is, how much search volume is behind each one of these search terms? Because getting ranking for a search term that has less than 10 searches a month globally is probably going to do very little to positively impact your bottom line when it comes to cases. So those are a few good things to just consider when you hear those types of guarantees.
All right. So on that note, and I guess on a very similar note, myth or fact that you need to wait at least 3 to 6 months to see, you know, any kind of result or return from an investment in SEO?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of being able to try to properly set expectations with an SEO campaign. You know, 10 years ago or even more, it was very realistic to be able to see traction from an SEO campaign within the first few months. As most of you all attending today have learned, SEO is highly competitive. It's one of the most competitive platforms out there to be able to drive cases, but it's also extremely lucrative if done properly. 3 to 6 months, depending on which market, may be very realistic. You know, if you're talking about a market area that you may only have 1 or 2 main competitors who are investing in their websites and investing in search engine optimization, given the lack of competition in a small market like that, I think 3 to 6 months is probably very realistic, and it would come in stages. An SEO campaign should be seen as a long-term investment. It's not something that, you know, with a flip of a light switch, you're going to be able to start seeing traffic and leads and even signed cases in the door within the first couple of months. Highly unlikely. And in fact, for some competitive markets, you know, if we're talking about personal injury in New York City, Houston, Atlanta, markets like those, if you have very little authority built into your site and you've never invested in a search engine optimization campaign before, I would be very comfortable suggesting that you likely will not even see traction from this campaign until well over a year. And in some cases, it may take 18 months to 24 months to actually start to see cases come in the door.
Oh.
And those competitors, yeah, right. That ends the conversation right there. Yeah.
Say that, they're going to hang up, right? Because who wants to wait a year? But what? Okay, so but this is a common fallacy, right? I mean, at least you're being honest. But why a year? I know everyone wants, you know, they sign up on Friday, the calls start coming in Monday. But why is a year realistic? I know that's not what people want to hear.
It's definitely not what someone wants to hear, especially once they hear what it's going to require in terms of investment on a monthly basis until they even get to that point, 18 months in. You know, 18 months in, investing at $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 a month, that's a considerable chunk of change by the time you get to 18 months. But you have to look at it, again, as a long-term investment. You should see your website from a search engine optimization standpoint as your new virtual office. The care, the attention that you're investing in not only your physical office space, but your staff and the internal resources should be the same care and attention you're putting into your website and your SEO campaign. If you're looking for immediate results, and I get it, you know, some firms are in a position where the cash flow is just not there. They need immediacy in terms of cases. I would suggest in highly competitive markets that SEO is not for you. You probably should consider a pay-per-click or more of an immediate response type campaign, at least enough to be able to build up your caseload, to get the cash flow going so that you can reinvest in your practice through a long-term SEO campaign. What you have to consider is that in 18 months to 24 months down the road, if you're seeing continued traction and you're seeing your website's traffic increasing and your leads increasing, consider the value of that traffic and those leads 2 years, 4 years, 10 years down the road. And if you're looking at it long term like that, and you reassess after 5 years of aggressively investing in search engine optimization, you're likely going to find that your cost per case is continuing to drop month by month, and your cost per client acquisition, which hopefully you all are tracking, will continue to slim down over time. And what you want to especially look at is there are tools like semrush.com. They offer free trials. You can also get paid subscriptions where you can look at some of the top ranking competitors of yours in the market, and SEMrush will actually estimate the value of their organic traffic if they were to invest in that same traffic through paid advertising. And some of these competitive markets, those firms would be investing over $75,000 a month, some cases over $100,000 a month to get that visibility in organic. And so if you have that mentality, you see the benefit of investing in something that's going to produce long-term visibility, and it's not going to turn off as soon as you stop paying toward it. So there's lasting value in an effective search marketing campaign.
We'll talk about some PPC because I know this is a popular one too. But all right, so I know you were touching on this. Another question is just that it's costly or too costly to improve SEO, right? I mean, not just the time investment, but also the financial investment. We'll probably talk about a little bit later because I know there were a lot of questions that came in as to just specific just estimates as to what it would take to rank in certain competitive markets. But just getting involved with SEO, is this just something that can be out of reach for many people, even just making an investment into it?
I think in some cases, some markets are hugely saturated. I mentioned a few, New York City, Houston, Atlanta. Those markets are highly competitive, and when you do a number of searches for your practice area, you'll see some of those top-ranking sites showing up consistently. Those sites have likely, or those business owners have likely been investing in that SEO campaign for years now, and in some cases over a decade. And so you have to understand that you're well behind the curve if you've never invested in SEO in your market area, and you most certainly want to weigh what it's going to cost, not only in terms of monetary, your financial commitment, but also the time commitment on this. And in some cases, I've had conversations with lawyers where we've come to the conclusion together after reviewing their site and really the lack of authority associated with their site in comparison to some of the top-ranking sites, and we've determined together that this likely is not an effective strategy for you, and you're better off looking at other methods of online marketing than to drop $10,000 or $12,000 a month in this market, not to expect results for another 2 years. And by that time, how much effort has those top-ranking competitors applied to their sites simultaneously? They're going to continue to outposition you. So it's a case-by-case basis, but you also have to look at what you're missing out on the other side of that coin. If there is opportunity in your market area or a lack of competition when it comes to SEO, what are you missing out on people in your market searching for personal injury lawyers, divorce lawyers, criminal defense attorneys, because you're not showing up? And if you're not found, you're not considered. And that's a price, or that's a cost that's often never even known. You have no way of tracking what you don't see.
Agreed. So you're basically saying that the law firm that's been investing $25,000 a month for the last 10 years in SEO, and they've been doing all the right things, should not be able to be dethroned by the kid fresh out of law school, opens up his practice, optimizes a few keywords. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, if that were the case, and this is assuming you're doing the right things when it comes to SEO, but it does make sense that as you're making this longer-term investment, you're continuing to invest really in your law firm, in your website, in the SEO, that you would continue to reap those benefits, and it would make it a much steeper curve for someone to break in into your market share.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. All right, so I love this one. If all or many law firms are taking advantage of SEO, they're all working with SEO companies, and they can't all come up on the first page of Google search. I mean, there's only so many law firms that can come up on page one, and quite frankly, if you're not on page one, you might as well be invisible. So in that case, if everyone's competing for the same page, and let's say there's 5,000 attorneys in a market, right? Only 10 or so can show up on page one. Is investing in SEO a waste of time and money?
I think the question there implies just lack of perspective. I think it's a great question, and it's a question that we hear often, but it's also assuming that there's only one quality search term or search query that you want to show up for to be able to get cases, which is a myth, very false, as false as it comes. We track this. The data through law firm websites religiously in terms of what's actually turning into legitimate qualified leads, and what's the next stage of that, what's actually turning into signed clients. And we find that for a single website over a year's time, there are literally hundreds of different search terms that drive qualified traffic and qualified cases into a firm's door. I saw a study the other day, a statistic that suggested that on a routine basis, Google sees 70% of searches being totally new, totally fresh to Google's index. Google has never seen that obscure search before. And that's largely based on the user, especially with mobile devices booming today, people using voice search. People speak very differently than they type. They speak in natural language. And so you're seeing searches starting to be a little more long-winded, much more specific. And so there are ways to be able to get visibility, not for just one search term, but hundreds, if not thousands of terms, which dramatically opens up the door for law firms seeking cases through a search engine optimization campaign. So regardless of who's currently investing in a web campaign in your market, there are always going to be what we would consider low-hanging fruit, or open doors, open opportunities for you to capitalize early on some of the, in some cases, what we call long tail terms, which is exactly what I'm referring to. People who are a little more detailed in those search strings, capitalize on that while you build up enough authority with your website to be able to effectively compete on page one for what we consider the money terms. The terms with more heavy search volume: personal injury lawyer, divorce attorney, those types of very commonly used terms that most certainly have lots of traffic and qualified traffic at that. But the other side of that is to capitalize on where you can actually see quicker results and quicker return on investment as well.
Very nice. Well, Tanner, all right. So in that case, now that Google's added 4 paid results at the top of search results, right? This has been like, this gets everyone terrified anytime Google does anything, right? Any algorithm change, but especially with like 4 paid listings showing up right at the top of the page before any organic search listings show up. Is SEO dead and PPC is the only way to get cases? We got this question a lot, actually.
We just this year we've been hearing this question a little more commonly, and I think it's a legitimate question because we definitely have seen that shift in landscape. Again, I'll point back to this mobile device because that's a hot topic right now. This is ultimately what drove that change on Google's landscape to begin with. People were starting to use mobile more frequently, and historically Google would have a few ads at the top and then the organic results below, which are the free listings. And then on the right sidebar, they had the ad showing on the right sidebar. Well, today, now that more and more people are using mobile devices and the screen is much smaller, Google's attempt to create a more uniform search results page between desktop and mobile, they've brought those ads over in a vertical format, and then they added 1 ad spot to the original 3 spots for ads. So now you do have 4 ads showing at the very top. Then you have typically the maps or the local results, and then right below the local results, organic search results. To address the question immediately, SEO is far from dead. SEO is bigger than it's ever been today because more and more people are using search to find information, to find local businesses, events, entertainment, and they know that they can access that information at the touch of their fingertips, with the device in their pocket. And so what I would ask you, or Michael, or any of the attendees listening today, how often do you click on ads? And I suspect that in some cases you probably do. But if I'm asking myself, if I'm looking for information, I am most likely going down to the local search results and the organic search results. Granted, that's purely anecdotal, and it's based on my personal patterns of search. But if you ask yourselves that, and I poll individuals as they call in and they talk to us about web marketing and what's the better platform, the majority of the time people choose organic. People are accustomed to ads. It's the same concept with DVR, people fast forwarding through commercials because they want to consume content on their time, on demand, and find unbiased information. And it's the same with search. Now, that being said, Google is raking in millions of dollars per day through AdWords. It's extremely effective and can be a powerful tool for lead generation for your firm. So don't misunderstand what I'm suggesting. There's no study that I'm aware of in the legal vertical that implies a certain percentage breakdown of people clicking on paid ads versus organic. At the end of the day, people are choosing either, depending on how well the ad copy is written and how compelling it is and how well it matches up to their needs or their search query. And then in some cases, if they're looking for local information, they're scrolling right down to that local maps pack and they're just picking between the three and they're not even clicking organic. And then in other scenarios, when they're doing more due diligence, they're doing research, you'll find them looking through the organic results to find more information, to consume content, and to do more investigative style research before they make a hiring or buying decision.
Excellent, Tanner. Thank you for that. Let's keep it rolling. So on the note of what you just mentioned, I know you talked about some of the like the local pack. So how important are reviews when it comes to SEO and search rankings, right? Because we're seeing a lot of that. There's been a big push for that. We've seen a lot of firms be very successful as a result. But like, how important are they? And I mean, Google reviews, maybe even reviews at other platforms like Avo, Yelp, and so on.
Yeah, to say that reviews are the holy grail to local search results is an understatement. Reviews are the key to having a successful online campaign today. It's extremely difficult today to be able to get consistent cases online without having social proof, and social proof being through reviews primarily. People have always based decisions off of personal endorsements, personal recommendations, seeking feedback from family members and friends. People continue to do that today, but they do it in a different format. Today, people are trusting reviews or endorsements from strangers, complete strangers, people they've never even met before, and we all do it, right? I mean, we don't always, fortunately, we're not always having to hire lawyers on a regular basis, but we do certainly search online, most of us. If you go to Amazon, how many of us are actually reading through reviews of a product before we make a purchase? We all do, for the most part. And people are doing the same for law firms. They want to know what other people have experienced. Well, Google is factoring reviews into their local search results today. And, not only is that important from a search visibility standpoint, but going back to the beginning of this conversation when I was defining SEO, the practice of a successful SEO campaign is yes, getting visibility. That's step number one. But number two is actually building enough trust to drive a phone call. And without reviews, you're basically leaving it up to the end user to do their own due diligence, to click into your website and determine whether you're the right fit, as opposed to being able to publicly display that right front and center on the search results page. So this is absolutely huge. It's critical for anyone investing in search engine optimization.
All right, well, Tanner, let's do a couple quick fire questions. I want to get through like 6 of these so we make sure that we hit them. But let's talk about backlinks, right? I mean, this is one. Are they still like the holy grail of a successful organic search marketing campaign? Like basically like links from other sites to your site, whether it's other blogs or other sites of authority. Like is it still based on the number of backlinks that you have, like going to your site that determines the search ranking?
Yeah, backlinks, and I think you defined it well. It's basically getting another link from another website, essentially that other website sending traffic your way through a hyperlink. This has always been important. Since Larry Page created Google and the search engines back well before the 2000s and the late 1990s, they used backlinks and the number of backlinks at that time as the way to evaluate how popular a website was. Today, the Google and their algorithm has gotten extremely sophisticated to being able to evaluate the quality of a backlink profile to a legal website. Now, today it's much less. In fact, it's not about quantity. It's far from that. It's more about quality and relevance. And so you may ask, what is a quality relevant backlink? Well, relevance comes down to geographic relevance. Is it a link coming from a local business or a local charity website or a local college or high school or university? That's local relevance, which is extremely valuable. And then there's practice area relevance or topical relevance. And so are they coming from legal specific websites or legal resources? Or when they link to you, are they using anchor text, the text that's in that hyperlink related to your practice areas? Those are all implications of relevance to your practice area, and that is what's so much more important today. Ideally getting links from trusted websites, websites that are already getting traffic themselves. You know, an obscure directory like abclawfirmdirectory.net that's getting 2 visits a month is not going to provide any value in terms of linking over to your website. But Avvo, certainly a powerful directory getting lots of traffic. Those types of links are relevant to your practice, and they're useful.
All right. Well, here's another one. I promise this wasn't me who submitted it, but myth or fact, video can make a significant impact in my website's SEO. And like I said, no questions off limits. So, like, what are your thoughts on this? Does it matter? Does it make an impact?
We have seen video make a very big impact on search engine optimization, and I'll tell you why. Google today, and other search engines, they place an emphasis on your on-site metrics. So what does that mean? That means that they are tracking how visitors are navigating through your website, how long they're staying on certain pages, which pages they're spending the most time on, and that's all telling a story to the search engines. You know, what is your site offering to the general public, and whether or not your site is retaining visitors as compared to your competitors' websites. Now, the beauty about video and how that complements that is people are engaged with video. They spend time consuming video. In fact, they spend a whole lot more time consuming video than they do actually reading through static content on a website. And so video is hugely impactful just purely from that standpoint and being able to retain visitors on the site longer. And that plays a huge role in search visibility. There's also benefit in transcribing your video content so that you actually have text through that to support it and recycle that through content throughout the web. And you know, there's a number of other factors in terms of why video is beneficial. But another factor is that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. And YouTube is a great place to host video content and allow users, your potential clients, to consume content away from your website that allows you to really brand your firm in a positive spotlight.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tanner. And I mean, we could probably talk about video throughout this entire presentation, but I won't bore the people. Let's shift it to social media. How beneficial is social media and having a social presence, when it comes to SEO?
This is a good question. We hear it more and more frequently today. Social media it's a powerful platform, but in terms of it directly affecting SEO, I think there's a bit of a disconnect in what we hear often in the web marketing landscape. For one, you may have heard the phrase social signals. Pushing social signals. If you're getting a lot of likes, lots of engagement, say on Facebook, we've heard before that those are great social signals to Google and other search engines. Really, the main benefit to Facebook and to other social media channels is more so the platform itself. It's a great place to be able to engage with the community, to be able to get content shared, and that's something that's rather difficult to get somebody to share a page of content on your website. But if you have something floating on social media that's catching attention and that's relevant, and it gets shared and then it gets shared again, and that exponentially increases, then what you're doing is exponentially expanding your brand and getting top-of-mind awareness in your market. And Google is certainly following brands. They have the ability to track how often your brand itself is searched. They also have the ability to track the traffic that's coming from outside platforms into your website to determine whether you are relevant or popular in your market. So really, social shouldn't be necessarily seen as a boost to SEO, but it is most certainly a complement to your overall SEO efforts, and absolutely should be employed in an effective search engine optimization campaign.
Excellent, and I agree with you. I think a lot of this stuff can be seen as like multiple spokes to a wheel, right? That there's not just one, one area of emphasis, and not just not just the website or even like any legal directories, but social also plays a role. And I think when everything comes together, that's where you see the biggest benefits. Not to mention you're not solely reliant on any one source of lead generation. Shifting gears, we get asked this one a lot as well. Do multiple websites for my law firm increase or decrease my overall SEO? And then is it better to have separate sites, like separate domains, for different practice areas? You've got one for criminal defense, one for personal injury. What are your thoughts on that?
That is a loaded question, and it's so difficult to suggest a one-size-fits-all strategy in terms of success. With this question. It's a good question, and I think what I'm definitely not going to avoid this question by any means. We'll address it, but I think it has to be handled on a case-by-case basis. And the biggest reason is that, let's keep it simple. If you have $10 that you want to spend in marketing this month, and you have 10 websites, are you going to split that $10 evenly and apply a dollar here, and a dollar here, and pretty much dilute that $10 of marketing? Or are you going to consolidate that $10 and apply it into one platform and make an even stronger push into that? In most cases, I will say not all cases, but in most cases, we recommend at ConsultWebs a consolidated approach where you have one strong law firm website and you invest your resources heavily into that one domain. If, going back to the backlinks effort, or if you're going to apply content efforts, those factors, it's the same concept of diluting that $10. You're much better off applying all those efforts into that one domain under one roof and utilizing those $10 effectively in terms of link building into one single primary domain. There are certainly scenarios where having a satellite website around a specific practice area or a specific community can be an effective solution. But for the most part, you're better off applying it into one site. And I'll add that one major factor, one driver behind that recommendation in terms of consolidating into one domain is related back to Google Local. Your Google My Business page, which is that profile for local search results, only allows you to tie one physical office address to one website. And so if you can only tie one website and you have 10 websites, well, then there's a huge competitive disadvantage to you right out of the gate. And that's often why that consolidated approach, one website, one unified effort, is where you're going to see the best value and the best return on investment.
Thank you, Tanner. And let's take the gloves off, man. I mean, this is let's really drill down to it. So let's say if you're an attorney who's in a very competitive market, let's say New York City, you're a personal injury lawyer, you open up your law firm today, what would it take and how long for that law firm to achieve a page 1 ranking for their practice area plus the city? So this is like a keyword that matters. It's the most, let's say it's a very competitive market, very competitive keyword, you're starting at square one, you just launched your website, like what will it take to get on page 1?
Yeah, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take heavy investment, heavy resources, and significant time both on your part and your web marketing provider's part, whether that's in-house or through a vendor. I would say that 3 main components: local optimization. We just talked about the Google My Business listing. You want that to be established as quickly as possible, and to ensure that your name, address, and phone number as a business, that business profile, is syndicated in as many places as possible. You need to have an aggressive content strategy where you're producing good, valuable, resourceful content around all of your practice areas, geographically relevant to that market area. And then you need to have an aggressive public relations effort to earn links back to your website. earning links from those trusted websites that we talked about earlier. Those are what you need to invest in. Now, in terms of timing, we talked a little bit about that in the earlier part of this conversation, that for competitive markets, if you have a brand new domain, it's highly unlikely you're going to see any traction whatsoever the first 12 months. And sometimes that's tough to swallow. But that's the reality. In a competitive market, when you have other websites that have been in existence for over 10 years, they've been investing in search engine optimization, it's not realistic to expect that you're going to see traction in that market the first 3 to 6 months, unless you invest in paid advertising or other forms of social advertising, largely through paid as well. An SEO campaign is going to take significantly longer, and the more competitive the market, the longer it's going to take to be able to see traction.
Well, that's not very exciting, right? I mean, when you think about it, most firms don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear it's going to take several years, right? We don't have several years. We want to start seeing a return right now, especially if someone's going to be investing in something for years on end, right? And then maybe it'll rank, or maybe it won't. The thing that I've always, like, when posed this question, the thing I've always found interesting is why a law firm, and I'm speaking transparently, why a law firm or any other business would feel that they deserve to be on page one if they're just getting started and somebody else has been investing for years and years and years. Of course, everybody wants it. I mean, I think that's obvious, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're in a market and you're competing against 5,000 law firms, and they all share a very unified goal. Everyone wants to be on page one, and not everyone, unfortunately, can win, right? So, unfortunately, chances are that 20% of the law firms are probably going to get 80% of the cases, right? The key players on page one are going to get the majority of the leads. They're going to probably get the best cases, all those things. So it can be, I think, intimidating in many solos and small firms to think, like, well, why would I even invest in this? Why would I even get involved if I'm not going to be able to compete with these guys? And especially even if I do compete, it's going to take years. And then, anytime, at least I say this as a business owner, anytime there's a promise or the pot of gold that's several years off, to me that's not as exciting, because what if I'm wrong, right? That would be a huge disappointment. But what would you say to a law firm that does want to be competitive in the search rankings, does not have, or maybe doesn't want to spend years hacking away at this, doesn't want to invest $25,000 a month? Like, what are their options?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some opportunities for them, both through a search engine optimization campaign. If they want to focus a little more tightly, so if you're practicing personal injury, as opposed to just trying to go after general personal injury terms, accident, injury-related terms, really start to evaluate what are some sub-practice areas within personal injury that you could really establish yourself as an expert around, and establish a brand around something a little more niche. Now, certainly you don't necessarily have to exclude other practice areas or general personal injury from the website, but from an SEO standpoint, that's a great opportunity to really get focused. You would much rather have these difficult conversations that you and I are having now, Michael, in terms of how long it's going to take to see visibility in the beginning than 18 months down the road after you've invested so much and not seen anything from that effort. So now's the time to be able to really start having those conversations and evaluating internally, reflecting internally as to what is the practice area that I want to really focus on from a marketing dollar standpoint, and go after it. And that's going to allow you to be more laser focused with everything you're doing, from content to link earning to social media posts and getting engagement that way. That could be one direction. Another direction is to pivot it toward a paid advertising model, where you will be able to see more instantaneous results from a leads and cases standpoint. And then, as I mentioned before, once the cash flow is picking up, you can reinvest it into a more long-term nurturing SEO campaign.
I like it, man. Well said. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that sometimes the temptation is to be McDonald's, right, and be the law firm for everyone, for any type of case. I mean, I've seen it all. I've seen personal injury, criminal defense, family law, we even do immigration, right? And you think about that, but the answer oftentimes is to really narrow that focus, narrow that niche focus, because rather than competing against every personal injury attorney in your market or every criminal defense attorney in your market, there are thousands, if you can hone in, chances are, what if you're just competing for the trucking cases? What if you're just competing for, very specific, like white-collar criminal defense cases, right? So that's, in a way, it's almost like the long tail keyword that you were discussing,
Right.
but also it narrows the pool. Now, the obvious question to that is, well, if I narrow my focus, am I going to lose out on all the other general cases that I was getting?
Yeah, I mean, and that should be a consideration, but you also have to consider the other side of that, that if you try to dilute your efforts, you're never going to get traction in any singular area, which means that you're never going to be able to get cases from the effort to begin with. And so, approach this with a realistic mindset, gain perspective for multiple people in relation to expectations, get a general consensus of something that you feel comfortable with in terms of timing and what you're hearing. And yeah, in those situations, I would suggest focusing all day long. And we've had some clients come to us and just want to target dog bite injuries, for example. And some of you may say that no way could I build a practice off of that. You may not intend to build your entire practice off of this one area, but it is a great way to make a splash and start somewhere and actually get some traffic, build some relevance on the web, and then expand as you see results. And we've had a lot of clients over the years start very tightly focused, see cases come in the door, they're not blown away by any means in terms of caseload, but seeing enough to justify a return on investment and to continue to invest, and then just expand incrementally as they see value in return. And that's a great way and very smart way of running your practice.
Agreed. So takeaway here, what solos and small firms can do to get more competitive is to really narrow that focus to a particular practice area or even a kind of a sub-practice area. If you're the expert at something, traditionally those are higher value cases anyway. And I will say this too, the purpose of even doing this presentation today was to bust legal SEO myths here. Just because you don't like the answer that you hear, it doesn't mean it's the wrong answer. I mean, I completely understand if if you speak with Tanner and he says, well, it's going to take this, and this, it'll take years, and this is going to be the investment that it requires, and then somebody else says, nah, we could do it in a month, it'll be $500, right? I see this trend just amongst just business owners in general, where oftentimes we're trying to find like that angle, right? Like, how do I get that shortcut to results? Is there like a faster way? Is there some way where I can game the search engine algorithms, and can I get there quicker? And what I often find is that people are going from like one kind of whatever the hot tactic is at that time to the next one to the next one. They're always searching for the answer. And when we put out the survey, I was surprised to see how many SEO companies law firms have worked with on average. I think it was like 4 or 5 different SEO companies, jumping from one to the next. The other one, unhappy with one company, another one says we can do better, and then you start working with them, and the next one says, well, we can do better than that. And amongst our most successful clients, the trend that I've seen, and it's not just when it comes to SEO or marketing or it's just overall, just the success of these firms really just comes down to sticking with something and consistently putting in the time and effort and work. And that in itself is a shortcut to getting to the result that they want, while everyone else is trying to find like that next angle, right? And they're searching endlessly for years, right? They're trying something new, What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you're looking for a silver bullet, it doesn't exist. And as much as you talk about somebody giving you the response of getting results in 1 month, and someone else giving you the response of getting results in 18 months. I want to choose the one in 1 month as well. We all do. We all want the quickest results at the lowest price, and that's just not reality. I mean, you talk about myth busting. That right there is the biggest myth out there, that you can get a lot for a little today. It doesn't work. I mean, where in life does that work outside of web marketing? It doesn't happen. And so that's why it is so important to be able to go in search engine optimization, go into it with the mentality that this is a nurturing, a building campaign. And if you look back in 6 months and you're not seeing upward trajectory, then I can tell you it's not working. I'll tell you right now, it's if you're not seeing progress from it, it's not doing what you set out for it to do. But if it is showing upward trajectory and your traffic's improving, your leads are improving, your caseload is improving, stick with it. stay the course, because look at it from the perspective of, if this is the traction we've built in this last 6 months, let's anticipate where we're going to be in the next 6 months. Let's anticipate where we're going to be in 2 years if we maintain this upward momentum. And the same is true if there's downward momentum. It's only going to continue to spiral, likely, if you continue the same efforts.
Agreed. Well, Tanner, we've got about 5 minutes here. So let's close it out with this last question. And this is one again, I'm glad you're willing to be on and answer any question here, but everybody's promising everything, right? Every web and SEO company they're the best, right? Everyone is going to do an outstanding job. They are the SEO experts. I have yet to see one that claims not to be. So what's the difference between all the legal SEO companies in the space? I mean, I don't envy you, because I see at some of the conferences and trade shows, there's literally 5 legal SEO companies right next to each other, and they're all making websites and they're all doing SEO. They all seem to be touting the same benefits, and of course, everyone's the best. So what's the difference between one company versus another company? And try to answer this in the most unbiased way that you can as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we look at it, whether you're hiring a legal SEO company or whether you're turning around and hiring a lawyer, a lot of the qualifications or considerations are the same. You want to look at experience. How long have they been in existence? That's always an important factor. If they're a fly-by-night shop, and they've only been around for 2 or 3 years or less than 5 years, then I'm not suggesting they're not good, but you want to be able to investigate further if they don't have a long-term successful business, and they've not been around for long enough to prove themselves in the industry. There have been a lot of iterations to search and algorithm changes over the last couple of decades. We've been around since 1999, and so you can imagine how many iterations there have been to the algorithm. And a fly-by-night group who's only been around for a few years hasn't necessarily had a client base around long enough to get through some of those fluctuations. And so that's why it's important to look at just strictly experience. Going right along that, looking to see if they have clients that are similar to yours. Are they working with the legal profession specifically? That's always a good one, because obviously you want to know that they understand the legal vertical. You want to make sure that they're not saying things that they cannot say on a website based on your state bar rules. You want to avoid ethics violations, and that's what you'll get into often if somebody's trying to focus on multiple verticals, including legal. Look at those specific clients, the ones that are relevant to your practice in similar sized market areas, and call those firms. Don't just look to see what rankings that they've showed you that they're ranking for, because anybody can run a tool and see what the top 3 terms that they're ranking for and show you those search terms. But call those law firms. Ask them how many cases they've been signing, if they're willing to share that. Ask them if they can endorse the web marketing company, and do your homework on that front. Also look at the resources, the internal resources. A lot of these groups today are outsourcing 80% of the work, and they're investing in their own sales staff. And so you want to make sure that the proportion, the ratio of sales staff to production staff is much more production heavy. That's a huge factor, because again, you want to make sure that there's actual people under that one roof who are working for you, and they're not just turning it around to another group or a contractor to be able to manage for you. Those are all considerations to really evaluate how strong a company is, how well they've endured changes within the landscape, and frankly, whether or not they're keeping other similar law firms happy in other markets.
Excellent, thank you, Tanner. And in sum, we always say, speak with their clients, right? Speak with the references they give you, and then find a few others online that maybe they didn't give you, and speak with those guys too. I think ultimately, clients will tell you the good, bad, and the ugly, and also I think, like you said, if you guys have been around since 1999, what is that, 18 years?
Right.
The internet was a different place back in '99, I'm sure. So congratulations on being around for this length of time. We've got exactly 1 minute left. I know that you put together a checklist to offer the attendees today. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, most certainly. We have a a checklist that we've prepared, some of which, some of the myths we talked about today, a couple of those are addressed in a little bit more depth in this checklist, and there's also a number of other myths that we've heard over the years that we've busted in this SEO checklist. So you can download that at consultwebs.com/SEO-checklist. It's free, no obligation. You can download that, and it's also going to give a number of resources that you can utilize to just better understand SEO. It's going to give you some things to consider, a little bit broader perspective on an effective SEO campaign, and also just help you hold your SEO vendor more accountable, asking the right questions, knowing the right information from month to month.
Awesome. Well, Tanner, thank you again for your bravery and your willingness to do this. Thank you for everyone also took the time out of their afternoon to watch today's presentation. I hope it was insightful. Tanner, thank you again. Much appreciated. I know we'll offer this up later on as a blog post for those who want to read it, but thank you again, man. Very much appreciated.
I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone attending, and I'll add, too, that if there's anything that we did not address that you want to address, I'd be more than happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you so we can go through that and provide you some added perspective. My contact information is there, and hope this was useful for everyone.
Excellent. Tanner, thanks again, man.
Thanks, Michael.